G'day and welcome to Kenty Blitz, your daily hit of NRL news. Kenty, big night last night at the Judiciary. Let's kick it off with that.
They got some work done last night. Didn't know that the Judiciary, look, they don't normally sort of, the match review come in, do their job. The Judiciary very rarely get used anymore, but Papalii went along last night, challenged his grade, or challenged the actual charge, and got off. Miracle of miracles, he beat the Judiciary, which, look, I think fair play to him. I think it was the right decision. I think it was an accident. I don't think he should have been charged. I think it just adds, Warren, to this general confusion we're feeling around the game at the moment about what offences are. The NRL, look, honestly, it shits me to tears, this. The way they sit there and they constantly are adjusting interpretation. The interpretation
on the run,
and it just, so we're all confused. We all don't know what's happening. We all have different opinions. There's no clarity on this is right, this is wrong. As soon as we think we're at the right spot, someone will come along with some small marginal change or some marginal adjustment and say, what about this, or what about when this happens? Oh yeah, okay, we'll bring in the cater for this.
Can I ask you a question? Who's responsible for that? Who makes those changes? Who keeps flip-flopping it at the NRL?
Well, ultimately, it comes down to the commission make the rule changes, and Andrew Abdo runs the Judiciary and the Match Review Committee. And within that, and that's all done in association with the referees, at the end of the year, we get the coaches in, get their opinions on things. I really think we just got to sit down and I'd love... Look, Graham Annesley is a big part of it too, but Annesley is a people pleaser, and I mean that in the highest regard. He's a lovely bloke, and he just tries to get through and do the right thing by everybody. But I think sometimes he gets probably a little bit too guilty of listening to people's arguments. The one thing about all this is coaches are very, very good at manipulating rules or manipulating interpretations of rules, particularly to their favour, and they have ways of disguising stuff. We've been seeing it. The obvious example for people who are looking at it is the continual adjustments we're having to make in tackling over the years with all the wrestle. Okay, so something would come into a wrestle, and then we'd have to come in with a rule to try and change it. We come in with how long does it take to? Can we lay down to play the ball? Well, wait till we hear the referee say tackled or movement or whatever the rest of it.
Can we put our hand on the ball? That's the last thing that comes off. That shit's me.
All that sort of stuff. So right now, Wayne Bennett's come out some time back, and everyone he did it with a bit of a smirk, and everyone thought, oh, here's good old Wayne just playing his old mind games with everybody. But I think it was a genuine confusion from him, to be fair, where he's basically said he doesn't know what a hip drop tackle is anymore. Okay, and this is because we're confusing ourselves, Warren. So Daly Cherry Evans came out on the weekend and with Sipley when he came with a hip drop tackle, and he actually said after game, he said he thought it was an accident. Okay, well the Judiciary didn't, or the Match Review Committee didn't agree with that. He took the charge. He got 4 weeks. Well,
he also broke Matt Finguy's leg. He's out for 12 weeks.
Yeah, he did. So, even if it was an accident, it was a dangerous tackle. But we're starting to get into this argument now. Well, it was an accident. Well, is an accident really an accident? Because that's another thing they've become very good at, is pretending. And we see that with the escorts, where they pretend with the escorts they're just accidentally there. They didn't really mean to interrupt the guy chasing the ball. They just happened to be there. So they've become very good at all that. The thing about the hip drop tackle is it's got to get out of the game. Now, Frank Panisi's come out and he's called on the NRL for more clarification. He said that people are becoming confused by it, and they are. They really are. Benji Marshall came out. Fainu got hit with a tackle on the weekend. He came out and he said that, he didn't really, well, in the end, he didn't even touch telling his leg, okay? So why was he put on report for that? Now, he wasn't charged now. That's all good, okay? But there is confusion there. Cost the Tigers a penalty in the game, which in other games we've seen a penalty like that can really cost you as far as your momentum and the way all that goes.
So Panisi's asked for clarification.
Yeah.
Why now? Is it? Do you think people agree with Panisi?
Yeah, I think the game does. And I think there's confusion around the game because we keep adjusting. And we still don't know. What I can't tell you, what I don't know, is if clubs are slowly adjusting their tackling style to still try and do a kind of hip drop tackle It looks like they are. So the traditional hip drop came in, you wrap the arms around the waist, and then you'd swing your body behind the ball runner and basically bring your body across his legs. Now, we're getting all sorts of broken legs out of that, and the game thankfully came in and had to introduce a charge for the hip drop to get it out. What we're kind of seeing now is they're still doing the same tackle, but rather than swing all the way around across the legs, they're basically coming around and they're pulling up still to the side of the ball runner. And because it's pulling up to the side, they're not coming in contact with the legs. But it's still the same philosophy where basically you lock around the waist, lose your own legs, and basically let the ball runner then have to carry your body weight, which is slows him up enough for someone else to come in and knock him over. So the thinking's the same. There's a slight adjustment to it. And I think in that little grey area, and rugby league, look, it's a world that exists in grey, rugby league adjudication. It just really is. The 10 metres, the whole lot. It should be black and white. It exists in the grey with interpretation, all that sort of rubbish. And so this is what they've tried to do now. They've tried to bring that in where you're just sort of sitting off to the side. I kind of get it. And in its true form, yes, it's a good tackle, it's a good strategy. But it only needs to go a little bit wrong, and it ends in tears, as we saw on the weekend with Fungi.
So why is that changed now? Is it there's different tackling
style?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu or what? Is all that rubbish coming into it? Or?
One of the things that Frank Panisi spoke about was he said, look, this tackle has probably been in the game for a long while, and we've just not really noticed it. And I agree with him there. But also, it is now a technique that has been brought into the game, and it's not a technique to come in and cause damage to the opposition players. As Panisi said, they're not trying to hurt players. Where the change is in the old days when you would tackle a player, you would hit from behind or from the side, which is where these tackles are coming from. You would hit around the sort of the hip region with your shoulder, wrap your arms kind of loosely, and then slide down the legs, which would lock the legs, pin the legs of the ball runner and bring him down. But the fault in that kind of tackling is that by the looseness of your arms to be able to slide down the legs, you could break the tackle also. If you broke the arms apart, it ended up in a missed tackle. So what's happened, and dare I say this word jiu-jitsu, because everyone gets upset when you talk about jiu-jitsu and rugby league, but what they've done with all the wrestling training, which heavily relies on jiu-jitsu, is now when they hit around the waist, rather than have a loose hold to slide down the legs and pin the legs, what they do is they lock one arm around the wrist of the other arm, which is it's a jiu-jitsu move. It's a very solid grip, and it makes it hard. And what they do is they just then pull in, squeeze around the hips, and there's no even intention to slide. They don't try to slide down. Initially, they've swung themselves across the back of the legs to immediately cut down the ball player. Now they're trying to stay beside him and just basically use their body weight to either bring him down like you're bringing down the steer at the rodeo type of thing. They're just bullying them down like that. But what's happening out of that is we're getting the odd mistake. But that's the change in tackle. Now, coaches won't coach away from that. That's the issue. Coaches, it's too effective a way to tackle to stop your players doing it. So they are going to try and insist that their players keep doing it. They're going to try and adjust on the way that you don't end up in now what we call a classic hip drop, and which is we're starting to see is they're coming in from the side. And as I said, in Fiona's case, he didn't even hit the legs, but the referee thought to him it resembled enough for him to be able to say, oh, okay, you're on report, penalty. But the danger is it's there. That's why I think Panisi's after clarification. The hard part, though, is you're not going to get total transparency from the coaches because the coaches know how effective it is. The one area that coaches will not retreat on is anything that could potentially weaken their defence, because that is the key to winning your games. And you've got to win the ruck, okay? You win the ruck, you win the game 9 times out of 10. And this tackle helps you win the ruck, okay?
And what I've noticed over the last 5, maybe a bit longer, is the speed of the play of the ball is so important now. You know, the runner,
all about that.
The runner tries to land on his knees. for the quick play the ball. And
the whole game's about that, okay? Yeah, even the guys going around the waist now, they can't really win the tackle on their own there. They're basically trying to do enough for someone then to come in over the top. We saw that on the weekend. They actually thought it was I think it was in the Sipley case, they actually thought on Fungi there was a high tackle that kept him down. It wasn't until they realised that he'd broken his leg that, the intention changed of what went wrong in the tackle. But the coaches won't tolerate any change in tackling style that could potentially weaken their defence. So we need to find a way somehow to get through this. I don't know how they're going to get through it, to be honest, because other than, which is what they did with Sipley, I think, is you've just got to start, when it does go wrong, you've really got to whack them. And I would argue a broken leg that's got to give you 10 to 12 weeks on the sideline, a 4-week charge is probably not enough. Yeah. I don't agree with the idea of if you're out 10 weeks with an injury, the player should be out for 10 weeks as well. I don't agree with that. People recover at different rates, even, and there are different injuries, and there's different levels of culpability, I think, in each case. We shouldn't be doing something like that, but by the same token, we really do need to sit down and say, these types of tackles, which are causing injuries and long-term injuries, the suspension needs to be bigger.
So another area that the NRL was trying to crack down, but now it seems to have gone by the wayside, is the play the ball. What's going on there?
Well, this is what fascinates me. Look, I'm not going to bang on too much about this, but we had the crackdown. We had the celebrated crackdown at the start of the year, and everyone said, and to most people, the whole thing was, thank God, because for particularly older generations, it's a bugbear to watch these basically ton of ball play the balls. They just roll it through. But on the weekend, we saw Regan Campbell-Gillard get penalised on the weekend for one of the tunnel ball play the balls. And everyone went, oh, hang on, it's back. They haven't forgotten about it totally. But then we saw on the week, Fuwaki for the Dolphins play the ball, dead set tunnel ball, did not even try and hit it with his foot, just stepped over the ball. And then movement, they put together a string of passes, the Dolphins, ended up with Ray Stone scoring. And everyone was so excited about the try, they forgot all about the play the ball. Play the ball was a stone cold penalty the other way, okay? The way you got to fix it, Warren, I get the whole annoyance about the play the ball. I've said this before, but this weekend highlighted what would have been a real, I think, milestone moment in this whole argument. If you treat the play of the ball essentially like a no ball in cricket, you could run halfway down the pitch and bowl the ball at the batsman if you wanted to, right? But if you get a wicket, he's not out. They'll go back. They'll say, mate, you've stepped over the popping crease. He's not out. So it forces the bowler to get behind the popping crease, okay, and bowl the ball properly. If you say, when a try is scored, let's go back to review, and we review offsides on kicks, we review escorts, and we review all different things. We review the lead runners, the whole lot. We go back and we run.
But not forward passes. We can't review
forward passes. We can't do that. We can review knock-ons. Go back and start it to play the ball. If he does not play the ball properly, say, mate, sorry, penalty the other way. What that will do, one, you won't get this rash of penalties, okay, in every game. And two, it'll force the clubs to go away and then during the week work on their play the ball. It will force them to do it. Because the one thing, you can imagine Christian Wolf on the weekend saying to his back rower, mate, why didn't you play the ball properly? You've cost us a try. Now in the end, it didn't matter. But at some point it will. It would have been just one of those landmark moments where they could have said, you know what? This is how you fix it in the game. You take a try off them because you didn't play the ball properly to start the movement. It's a simple fix. It's a simple fix. And if you really want to get serious about it, rather than have that crackdown, which fizzles away after 6 weeks, you get it sorted this way.
Yeah. I know the NRL watched this show, I think, maybe. So I think the most frustrating, I think the most frustrating thing from a fan's perspective is just the inconsistency. They just got to fix that up. If there was consistent, doesn't matter which way it goes.
This fixes it as well.
Yeah.
Don't blow a penalty. Don't blow a penalty anymore for wrong play of the ball, unless it's obvious, whatever. But if they want to just roll it between the legs, fine. But if you score a try off it, which the Dolphins ran 50 metres on the weekend with their try, okay, if you take the try off them, You watch coaches start to say, mate, get your play the balls right, because it's a simple fix from them. Just play the ball right. Done.
Yep. Mates, bit of a change at the Rabbitohs with Jai Gray being dropped to 14 and Latrell coming back. Was that expected from your perspective?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Look, particularly after the way Latrell played last weekend, Wayne Bennett said it right at the beginning, Latrell's the fullback, he'll be the fullback. As much as Jai Gray was going well and until last weekend was leading the Dally M's, Latrell's your match winner. He's the guy that's got to make the difference in the game. He was always going to go back there. I like the way Wayne Bennett's handled it. I think what he's done is he's got Latrell back in the game through necessity, injuries in the halves, whatever. He's had to use Latrell at 5'8". He used him at centre for a few weeks. Like, what he's done there is he's brought him back and he's using where he's had to use him. But the Rabbitohs need to start winning games, and Latrell's your match winner. He's had a couple of games now back to get his match fitness, so off he goes. And as much as it's disappointing for Jai Gray, fact is, even in his head, he knows that Latrell's the big dog in the team, and Latrell needs to have his position. And I think if Jai Gray, which everything you've heard about him is he's just got a tremendous attitude, just loves his footy. I think it's an easy sell to say, mate, we're not abandoning you. You're not being punished. It's just the reality of football.
You'll be the strike. You'll be the strike off the bench.
Yeah, and we'll bring you on as a 14, and you'll be our guy to come on and bust the game open with just what you do around the ruck already. You just have a license to roam. You'll come on and play, like a floating lock sort of role, I imagine, and just try and bust opposition teams up through the middle. I think it's a great idea.
So Sullivan back at 7 there.
Yeah.
Dodd still hasn't got a look in?
Well, he came on the weekend, didn't he? He played a little bit. By the time he got on the field, though, the game was gone. And and it wasn't really an environment, given how poorly Souths were going against the Bulldogs, for him to really come on and shine. So he's a little bit of a victim of fate there, so to speak.
Would you say his cards are marked, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think, look, he's by all reports, good young kid coming through, but Bennett didn't recruit him. I think, I know Humphreys has really exceeded their expectations. Jamie Humphreys, with what he's done. Now, he's still probably not back. Well, he won't be back this week. He's probably back next week. But Sullivan's just a good game manager. South, that's probably what they need at the moment, just someone to just get them around the park. And Dodd, he's just sort of still finding his way a little bit in the NRL. It is a big jump from English Super League to NRL football. And really, the guys that come here and fit in immediately from England are generally international players from England. Dodd's on his way.
Back rowers. Well.
Yeah, but Dodd's been asked to come over and I think improve pretty quickly. I think he's a good player, but at the moment others are doing the job for South, and there's no reason to really jam him in the side right now.
Mate, other fullback news: Selvin Cobo goes into fullback for the Broncos.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. This obviously Reece Walsh is out injured. He's hurt his knee, so he's out for some time.
4 to 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah, and
it's a long time.
Yeah, and Michael Maguire, okay, I think the smart play is to put Selwyn Cobbo there. I think he's just a weapon, Selwyn Cobbo.
He's only played 2 or 3 games at fullback, though, I think.
At the Broncos, yeah. But look, there's no doubt he knows how to play it. 1, 2, physically he's perfect
big
for
body.
it. He's a big body, and he's got speed, and the other thing, he's just got footy intellect. He's just one of those guys you watch and you know he grew up just playing backyard footy.
Which is what you were talking about, right?
Yeah, so he's a great choice. The interesting thing, though, is he's off contract at the end of the season, and there's been talk about him being shopped around as a fullback to try and get the fullback money. Fullbacks are paid far more handsomely in the NRL than wingers are. But I think it's an indication of how Michael Maguire, how much he wants to win this game and how much he wants this next period for the Broncos before they head into Origin to really try and stack up some wins. Because it is, I wouldn't say it's a risk. He's done the right thing, but there's no doubt teams will be looking at Cobbo at fullback and saying, okay, well, what's he like? How's he going to go? And can we invest in him in that position for our club in the future? So, but Maguire has shown how desperate he is, I think, to try and get a good start heading into Origin. The Broncos have been going okay, but every now and then they had a stinker on the weekend. They just didn't. I don't think they. I know they went into extra time, but they didn't turn up like I thought the Broncos would. They had some really bad errors in the late in the game that just were
So what's happened there?
uncharacteristic.
Well, because at the start of the season, the Broncos looked favourites to win the whole thing. You know, they had a great 7-6.
Well, they started terrifically with the 7-6 with Reynolds and Hunt there. That's kind of gone off the boil a little bit. On the weekend, Maguire shifted Hunt from 5/8 to a dummy half. And I actually think it did work. I think I liked the whole shift. They needed something. They needed a bit of a spark. And even though there was a stack of hookers playing for the Broncos on the weekend, at one point, you know, they Pakes and Billy Walters and whatnot. But they needed something. And I think in all respects, we've seen the future of the Broncos, certainly for this year. I think Hunt will probably stay at hooker at some point. How he handles that's going to be interesting. But once Ezra Mam is back, and he's not far away now.
2 weeks, I think.
2 weeks away, yeah, he is. And once he's back, we might not slip straight into 5/8, but he'll certainly, by the end of the season, he'll be playing number 6. And then what they do with Hunt's going to be an interesting thing. Do they play him as a 14 role, like he's done plenty of times, or do they just put him straight into number 9 and let him go from there? It'll all depend, I think, on how he handles it and how the Broncos click when that's going on.
And maybe also how Cobbo goes, because, you know, Ezra could go back to fullback, potentially.
Oh, not really. Yeah, kind of. But I'd say more, no. Like, Reece Walsh will be back playing fullback by then. By the time they really get to know that, he'll be back. So that'll happen there. But the fact is, the Broncos are not – they started well, but there's just been a couple of little wobblies here and there that they haven't been able to build on week after week after week. Now, I know it's still early in the season. They're still finding their way. But after a bit of a surge at the start of the year, it's starting to come a little bit unstuck, I think. And they need to refine their rhythm a bit. They need to get going, and they need to settle on what a spine looks like. And I think the spine will end up looking like Hunt number 9.
You're a big fan of Madge, right?
Yeah.
You think what he's done, I mean, of course, he won the grand final with the Rabbits.
Yep.
Didn't do so well at West Tigers.
Yep.
Did very well at New South Wales.
Yep.
There is chat that he burns the teams out, etc.
Yeah, there is chat there, and that's fair enough. And look, I've had a lot of discussions with him about things like this. You know, one of his favourite sort of sayings is, you know, steel sharpens steel. Okay. Now, that's what got South to where they were when they won the premiership. Where South really benefited was they had a bloke called Sam Burgess who bought into what Maguire was about, and he got the Rabbitohs going all as one. Where it started to go pear-shaped for Maguire at South was when Sam injured his shoulder and was really unable to do a lot of stuff as far as he couldn't do bench presses, for example. His shoulder was that weak. And what happened out of that was Maguire was continually sort of pushing him to play, and there's times where Sam probably could have sat down for the week and rested his shoulder, and just because it was pain as well as incapacitation, okay? But Maguire is one of those guys who is a hard taskmaster, and he kept trying to convince Sam to continue playing, and Sam pushed through that because he's a soldier when all said and done. But in the end, it started to irk him, it grated with him, and it became a bit of a friction between the coach and player. And I think at that point, Maguire probably erred in not sort of sitting down, listening to Sam and saying, okay, mate, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to put you down, I'm going to rest you and give you some time off to try and get your shoulder right. And that's just this simple thing led to this fallout between them where in the end they were barely speaking. And once Maguire lost the support of Sam, it was easy to lose the support of the rest of the players because Sam was such a leader within the group. And that was the beginning of the end for Maguire at South. And right now he's at the Broncos. Now, I don't know if he's got that player, that Sam Burgess type leader at the club. Certainly there are some players who are close to it. But by the same token, that senior playing group of the guys he's got to keep happy. You hear mixed reports out there about who's happy and who's not. Certainly there is some whinging about how hard they train. Maguire's response to that is that they are essentially, so far behind in some areas that they need to be fast-tracked and they need to train harder in some spots, which some players respond to, some don't. And that's the sort of the subtext of the whole Broncos season is how they adjust and whether they can find common ground there. Because at some point, for them to get through the end of the season, they need to find common ground where they're all on the same page and go in the same direction if they're going to be premiership threats. If they don't get it right, then under pressure, it'll come unstuck.
I once heard Biffa Burgess on a podcast talking about Madge, and he was saying that they lost the Burgess boys when Biffa got dropped for the grand final. Maybe that's a story for another day, but I thought that was quite interesting. And then, he seems to leave
they are
clubs.
a close family, and you can understand brothers supporting brothers. Yeah.
So Shane Richardson came out today with a clarification of sorts about where the club stands, where he stands, where Benji stands, where the Galvin situation stands. What do you think of that?
Yeah, good. Good on Shane Richardson for doing it. I think it was necessary. I think he's sort of playing a little bit of catch up from last week where things I think were handled as well as they could have been. He gave an interview to Brent Reid at the Telegraph, and he just went through it all. And I just, you know what, there's so much confusion about this, Warren, and so many idiotic thoughts out there from people who, some people you can tell them something and they just have it in their head that whatever their take is on it is the right one. So just to say, let's just go through, and you go through through Richard's quotes, right? And this is where all this bullshit happens.
I'll get an answer on these ones, right? He has never requested a release.
Well, see, people are saying Lockie Galvin's wanted out of the club straight away. So Shane Richardson said he has never requested a release, is the word he said. So you've got to take his word at that. They have not gone there. You can't assume because you think it's going to happen that that's what they've done. So good on Shane Richardson for doing that.
I don't disparage his decision at all, except that I don't agree that Benji wouldn't make him a better player.
That's fair enough. That's
his opinion.
That's opinion.
Yeah, it's his opinion.
And so he said that too. But that leads into what he actually said about Benji, a better player. Lockie Galvin has not said anything. Shane Richardson confirmed that.
Well, that's
today.
what Richo said. He said, and not at one time has he ever said that Benji's not a good coach or can't coach.
So, look, what people are probably not getting here is this could be as almost entirely, if not entirely, it's just leverage from the manager to get him out of the club, to pick a fight to get him out of the club. All these people have turned on Galvin and said he shouldn't be picked. He should have been dropped because he bagged the coach. He never bagged the coach. No one has heard him bag the coach. Shane Richardson has not heard him bag the coach. They've acknowledged that. Benji has had him in, Lockie Galvin, and spoken to him this week. His words were, when he picked him, we need to win. That's why he picked him back in the side. That's why it was a mistake last week to drop him. They need to win. What people don't seem to be able to grasp is the fact that this might be all just leverage for Isaac Moses, who does business his way, which is a way I don't approve of, just for all you knuckleheads out there. Okay. It's leverage to get the upper hand in this negotiation now to get him out of the club, okay? All Lockie Galvin has said is, I will not be signing a contract beyond 2026. There's no doubt his manager, who has a long-running feud with Benji, which
no one seems to know what that's about.
Well, I don't know where it started, but what I've gone out and found out, it basically became no talk is all off with John Bateman. John Bateman also managed Isaac Moses. John Bateman was not a fan of Benji. John Bateman was quite critical of Benji at different times privately, but that soon got back to Benji through Isaac Moses, which was then used to get John Bateman out of the club and out of his contract at West Tigers. Okay, so it's whether there was bad blood before then or what degree there was before then, I do not know. But what I would say is it escalated at that point. But all these people who just find this narrative that's convenient to their way of thinking, it's just, mate, pull your heads in.
So Tigers have called for mediation. Oh, sorry. So Galvin's called for mediation.
Galvin's lawyers have called for mediation,
Yeah. Well,
which will be about trying to come to some sort of resolution, which I think will end with him leaving the club at the end of this season. I don't think for all the talk about moving on this year, I don't think he'll go this year. I think they'll try and get through this season with him, as they should. Okay, and then and again, people saying, well, he's only on 350 next year, so why wouldn't he be agitated to get out? He's not. The Tigers have already offered him to upgrade next season, which will match all the other years that they've offered him. So that's not an issue either. So for people trying to suggest that's the issue to get him out next year, the fact is his manager doesn't like Benji. He's had a long-standing feud with the club, Isaac Moses. He's got to move him out, and this will ring a few bells out there. The problem for the Tigers, and this is why they probably need to come to some common ground with Isaac Moses. The problem for the Tigers is that the manager of Jareem Buller, their star fullback coming through, is the one and only Isaac Moses, who has a clause in his contract at the end of next season he can get out. So boom, there's the show. Yeah.
Thank you.